So one of our main focuses in analysis is discussing and analyzing a story's theme. Theme is sort of the big picture. It's the what does it all mean question in the story. But theme is rather complicated. And one thing that you'll want to be able to distinguish between from the beginning is the difference in a theme and a moral. So a theme is a dominant idea in a story. It's what the story works to convey. It's some sort of observation or commentary about human experience and the way that people think or act or experience life. Now, a moral, on the other hand, is a lesson. It is some sort of commentary about how people should think or act or experience life. And while some literature will have a suggested sort of moral takeaway, most literature really doesn't. It'll have things that you as the reader might take away personally. You might interpret some sort of lesson or steps, call to action from a story based on your understanding of it. But that's really more of a personal reading experience than a critical conclusion. Critical and analytical conclusions have to deal with theme. So things or observations about the way that life is. Oftentimes, an author is just conveying an experience in an artistic way. There's not a lesson. It's just something for us to reflect on or relate to or think about. That's what most literature in this course will be doing. Now, in terms of theme, there are a number of different ways that we can come to those conclusions, and we'll talk about those over the next many weeks. But there are certain themes that are considered conventional. So in literature, we do have conventions, and there are conventional plots, there are conventional conflicts, conventional symbols, and there are also conventional themes. Now, these are themes that appear throughout the literary canon or throughout the narrative canon, really film and television included, that are very common and recognizable to us as readers. One of those is the loss of innocence or the coming of age story. And this can work in a number of different ways. That's what the first several weeks we will be covering through several different stories, is the different ways that a coming of age story can work. But we also see things like nostalgia for the past, a conflict between a person and their society, conflicts between generations. We see just sort of the pain and challenge and hard work of love and relationships, the general things that we're disillusioned about as people. These are sorts of things that we recognize when we read them, but they work differently. So different authors from different times will use them differently. Authors from different cultural backgrounds or different identity experiences will use them differently. And as well, they'll work differently at separate points of time. So as we're reading these coming of age texts, some of them are from the 1960s, some of them are from prior to that, some of them are from the 2000s, and you will see that although they work differently in all of these contexts, they're sort of universal or common ideas about human experience that exists in all of those contexts. Another thing to know about theme is that it's not story specific. A theme isn't like saying we're supposed to learn about this specific character's experience. We're looking for what that experience conveys beyond that character's experience. So for example, this week you'll read Alice Walker's The Flowers. And in this story you have a young, she's 10 years old, African-American girl in post-Civil War Reconstruction South during the height of Jim Crow. And she stumbles upon something that, changes her or startles her in the woods. And while many of us cannot relate to that specific experience because of our identity, we also can't relate to what it's like to be a 10-year-old girl growing up in the Jim Crow South. So although we can't relate to that specific experience, that's not what the theme is. We can all relate to the experience of learning something dangerous or frightening about the world that you didn't know before when you were a child, or being confronted with some dark reality about who you are in the world that you live in that you didn't know about with that childhood innocence. And that's what the theme is when we're looking at these sorts of things. We're looking at those sort of universal observations that can apply to anybody at any time. And the last thing that you will want to be aware of when we're talking about theme is that some students fall into the trap of trying to spin every story in a positive direction, or say that, this character overcomes everything and it's happily ever after at the end, or here's what they learn and everything's all better, or they fix their relationship, or they, become a grown-up instantly. None of those things are going to happen in literature because that's not the way that life works. That's not the way that people work. And that's not something that's interesting to us as readers, to read about people who don't act like people. So oftentimes you will be looking at things that are a little bit more complex, a little bit more ambiguous, but you want to avoid the trap of trying to turn every story into a positive meaning or a lesson to be learned, because that's not what literature is.